There is a place in South Florida where the water moves so slowly that early surveyors did not believe it was moving at all. They called it a river, 60 miles wide, 100 miles long, and in most places barely ankle deep. It looks like a field. It behaves like an ocean. And it is full of things that can kill you. Most people who come here already know about two of them. They come for the alligator. They have heard about the python. They take the airboat tour, they get the photograph, and they drive home believing they have seen what the Everglades has to offer. They have not. Because the Everglades is not one ecosystem, it is a collision. It is the only place on the North American continent where the temperate world runs out of room and the tropics begin, and it sits at the end of one of the busiest exotic animal import pipelines in human history. Animals from 4 continents have been dropped into it, deliberately and accidentally, for over 100 years. Some of them died. A surprising number did not. What follows are the 15 most dangerous animals living in the Florida Everglades right now. Some of them are native, some of them are not supposed to be here at all. And the further down this list you go, the less likely you are to have known they were out there. Number 15. The red imported fire ant. You are going to be tempted to skip this one. Do not. Solenopsis invicta arrived in the United States through the port of Mobile, Alabama, sometime in the 1930s, most likely in soil used as ship ballast. It spread across the American South at roughly the speed of a walking person, and it reached Florida decades ago. Today it is in the sawgrass, in the tree islands, in the levees, and in the dry ground of every trailhead parking lot in the region. What makes it dangerous is not the individual insect, it is the response. A fire ant colony does not defend itself one ant at a time. When the mound is disturbed, workers pour out and climb. They do not sting immediately. They climb first, silently, and they wait. And then a chemical signal passes through the group, and every ant on your body stings at the same instant. A single ant can sting repeatedly, pivoting on its jaws and driving the stinger in a circle. The venom is not like a bee sting. It is an alkaloid called solenopsin, and it kills the tissue it touches. Within a day, the sting sites turn into white pustules that can last a week. For most people, this is agony and nothing more. For a small percentage, it is anaphylaxis. Deaths in the United States attributed to fire ant stings are documented, and they are not rare enough to ignore. And here's the part that matters in the Everglades specifically. When the water rises, fire ants do not drown. The colony links legs and forms a living raft that floats, sometimes for weeks, carrying the queen and the brood in the center. Those rafts drift. You can be standing in shallow water, well away from any mound, and have a colony arrive at your ankles on the current. Number 14. The Africanized honeybee. In 1957, 26 African queen bees escaped from an experimental apiary in southeastern Brazil. The experiment was an attempt to breed a honeybee better suited to tropical heat. It worked. What the researchers did not anticipate was how far the resulting hybrids would travel, or how quickly. They moved north at roughly 200 miles a year. They crossed into Texas in 1990. Florida confirmed established, reproducing populations in 2005. They are in the Everglades now. They nest in tree hollows, in the cavities of old buildings, in utility boxes in the ground, and in places European honeybees would consider unacceptable. Visually, you cannot tell them apart. Their venom is not more potent. Drop for drop, it is the same. The difference is entirely behavioral. A European honeybee colony that feels threatened might send out a dozen guard bees. An Africanized colony sends hundreds. They respond to disturbances from a much greater distance. They stay agitated for far longer after the threat has left. And critically, they pursue. Where a European colony gives up in a few dozen yards, Africanized bees have been documented following a target for a quarter of a mile or more. In open sawgrass prairie, there is very little to hide behind and nowhere to shelter. The standard advice is to run in a straight line and to keep running long past the point where you think it is over. Do not jump into water. They wait above the surface for you to come up. Number 13, the eastern coral snake. Everything about this animal is designed to be underestimated. It is small. An adult is usually under 3 feet and about as thick as a pencil. It is not aggressive in any meaningful sense. It spends most of its life under leaf litter and rotting wood. And the overwhelming majority of people who live inside its range will never see one. But the eastern coral snake carries the most potent venom of any snake in North America. It is not a pit viper. It is an elapid, in the same family as cobras and mambas, and its venom does not destroy tissue. It attacks the nervous system. It blocks the signal between nerve and muscle. The bite itself can be almost painless, and for hours afterward there may be no swelling, no discoloration, and no obvious sign that anything has happened at all. Then the eyelids get heavy, then speech slurs, then swallowing becomes difficult, then the diaphragm stops. Onset has been documented up to 12 hours after the bite. A person can be bitten, look at a small mark on their hand, decide it is nothing, and go to sleep. There is a further problem, and it is not biological. Production of the North American coral snake antivenom was halted years ago. The remaining stock has had its expiration date extended again and again through testing because there has never been a commercially viable replacement in wide distribution. Supply is finite and it is not evenly distributed across hospitals. The rhyme about red touching yellow is real, and in the United States it is broadly reliable. It is also completely useless if you cannot see the snake, which describes almost every bite that actually happens. Number 12, the dusky pygmy rattlesnake. If you get bitten by a venomous snake in Florida, this is statistically the one most likely to have done it. The dusky pygmy rattlesnake is a small animal, usually under 2 feet. Thick-bodied, gray with dark blotches, and a rust-colored stripe down the spine. Its rattle is so small that it produces a sound most people describe as an insect, not a warning, a buzz you ignore. It is also extraordinarily common. It occurs across essentially all of peninsular Florida, in pine flatwoods, in wet prairie, along the edges of marshes and canals, and in suburban yards backing onto conservation land. It does not flee. Its defensive strategy is to hold absolutely still and rely on camouflage that is genuinely excellent against pine needles and leaf litter, which means the first indication that it is there is frequently the strike. The venom is hemotoxic. It is rarely fatal to a healthy adult. What it does instead is destroy tissue at the bite site, and pygmy rattlesnake bites are a well-documented cause of permanent damage to fingers and toes, including amputation. It is on this list not because it is the deadliest snake here. It is on this list because it is the one you are actually going to step on. Number 11, the Florida cottonmouth. There is more mythology attached to this animal than to almost anything else in the American South, and it obscures a real danger. The Florida cottonmouth is a genuinely semi-aquatic pit viper. It swims with its body riding high on the surface. It hunts fish and frogs and other snakes, and it is entirely at home in the shallow water that makes up most of the Everglades. In some parts of its range, population densities are remarkable. The mythology says it chases people. Controlled behavioral studies have looked at this repeatedly, and the answer is consistently no. What a cottonmouth does when cornered is stand its ground and gape, throwing its head back and holding its mouth wide open to display the white interior that gives it its name. It is a warning. It is also, to a person who does not know what they are looking at, extremely alarming. The real risk is proximity and the environment. This is a snake that lives exactly where people wade, fish, and launch boats, and it is a snake that does not reliably retreat. Its venom is strongly cytotoxic, meaning it breaks down tissue and blood cells at the site and outward from it. Untreated bites cause severe necrosis. Fatalities are uncommon with modern treatment. Serious permanent injury is not. Number 10, the eastern diamondback rattlesnake. This is the largest venomous snake in North America, and one of the largest rattlesnakes that has ever existed. Verified specimens have exceeded 7 feet. Historical accounts describe animals approaching 8. A large adult is heavy-bodied, thick as a man's forearm, and capable of striking a substantial fraction of its own body length. The fangs on a big one can exceed an inch. The venom yield is enormous. A single defensive bite from a large eastern diamondback can deliver a quantity of venom that requires dozens of vials of anti-venom to counter. And the treatment cost alone has become a documented issue in American healthcare. The venom is hemotoxic, and it causes catastrophic swelling, internal bleeding, and tissue destruction. It lives in the pine flatwoods, palmetto scrub, and dry hammocks that sit like islands in the Everglades system. It uses gopher tortoise burrows for shelter, and it is disappearing. Habitat loss, road mortality, and organized rattlesnake roundups have driven eastern diamondback numbers down steeply across its range, to the point where its conservation status has been formally reviewed. The most dangerous snake on the continent is now, in most of the places it lives, a genuinely uncommon animal. Number 9. The spectacled caiman. Here is where this list stops being about animals that belong here. The spectacled caiman is a crocodilian from Central and South America. It is called spectacled because of a bony ridge between the eyes that resembles the bridge of a pair of glasses. Adults typically run between 5 and 7 feet. It has been breeding in South Florida since at least the 1960s. The population traces back to the pet trade and to animal dealers in the Miami area, at a time when a hatchling crocodilian could be bought for a few dollars and released when it became inconvenient. Enough were released in a climate close enough to their native range that they established. There is a self-sustaining, reproducing population of a South American crocodilian in the canal systems of Miami-Dade County and the eastern margins of the Everglades, and it has been there for over half a century. An adult caiman is not an alligator in terms of threat to an adult human. It is smaller, and there is no meaningful record of fatal attacks in Florida. But it is a fully equipped crocodilian with a serious bite. It is more excitable and defensive than an alligator of comparable size. And it is functionally invisible as a threat because almost nobody knows to look for it. If you are on a canal bank in western Miami-Dade and you see something with the profile of a small alligator, there is a real possibility that it is not one. Number 8. The Nile monitor lizard. Africa's largest lizard is loose in Florida. The Nile monitor is a powerful, fast, semi-aquatic predator that reaches 5 to 7 feet in length. It has a mouthful of sharp, recurved teeth, a tail it uses as a whip with real force, and claws built for excavating. Like other monitors, it has a mild venom in its oral secretions, which along with heavy bacterial load, makes a bite a serious wound risk beyond the mechanical damage. Florida has established populations. The largest and best documented is in Cape Coral on the Gulf side, where the canal network appears to have provided close to ideal habitat. There are additional populations on the Atlantic side in Palm Beach and Broward counties, and animals have been recorded in and around the Everglades system. The source is the pet trade again. Nile monitors were imported in significant numbers as juveniles when they are manageable and inexpensive. They do not stay that way. What makes this animal a genuine ecological problem beyond human risk is diet. Nile monitors are aggressive predators of eggs and nesting birds. In their native range, they are a major predator of crocodile nests. In Florida, they have access to burrowing owl nests, sea turtle nests, and the eggs of species that have no history of dealing with anything like them. Number 7. The wild boar. This one has been here longer than the United States. Hernando de Soto landed on the Gulf Coast of Florida in 1539 with a herd of pigs as a mobile food supply. Some escaped. Over the following centuries, more were released, and later deliberately introduced European wild boar interbred with the feral descendants of domestic stock. The result is an animal that is genetically a mixture and behaviorally entirely wild. Florida has one of the largest wild pig populations in the country, and they are present throughout the Everglades region, wherever there is enough dry ground. A mature boar can exceed 300 pounds. Males grow continuously erupting tusks in the lower jaw, kept razor sharp by grinding against upper teeth, and they carry a thickened shield of cartilage and scar tissue across the shoulders specifically for fighting other boars. When a boar attacks, it does not bite. It charges low and sweeps its head upward, and the injuries this produces are long, deep lacerations to the legs and lower body. Most encounters are not attacks. A pig that detects you will usually leave. The dangerous scenarios are specific and predictable. A sow with piglets, a wounded animal, and a boar surprised at close range and dense cover, which in the Everglades is the normal condition, because you cannot see through sawgrass and neither can it. Number 6. The Florida black bear. Most people do not associate bears with the Everglades. The bears do. The Florida black bear is a distinct subspecies, and Big Cypress National Preserve, which sits directly against Everglades National Park and is part of the same greater ecosystem, holds one of the state's core bear populations. They use the cypress domes, the hardwood hammocks, and the pine islands, moving through the wet landscape between patches of high ground. This is a conservation success story that has quietly created a safety problem. Florida black bear numbers fell to a few hundred animals by the 1970s. Today, the statewide population is in the thousands. At the same time, development has pushed housing directly against bear habitat across South and Central Florida. Black bears are not grizzlies. They are generally not interested in confrontation, and the overwhelming majority of encounters end with the bear leaving. But an adult male can exceed 400 pounds in Florida, and the animal that has learned to associate humans with garbage, pet food, and unsecured coolers is a fundamentally different animal from one that has not. Serious injuries to people in Florida have occurred, and they have overwhelmingly involved bears that were habituated to human food. Number 5. The Florida panther. There are somewhere in the range of 200 adult Florida panthers alive. All of them are in South Florida. Most of them are in and around the Everglades and Big Cypress. This is a puma, the same species as the mountain lion of the American West, isolated in the southeastern United States and pushed to the edge of extinction. By the early 1990s, the surviving population had fallen to roughly 20 or 30 animals, and inbreeding had produced heart defects, kinked tails, and reproductive failure. In 1995, wildlife managers released 8 female pumas from Texas into the population in a deliberate genetic rescue. It worked. The population climbed. An adult male Florida panther can exceed 130 pounds and take an adult white-tailed deer. It is a stalking ambush predator with the physical capability to kill a person without difficulty. It essentially never does. The record of panther attacks on humans in Florida is remarkably close to empty, and that is over a period covering the entire modern history of the state. This is an animal that has been given every opportunity and has consistently chosen avoidance. The reason it appears on this list is not attack frequency. It is capability, and the fact that panther range and human range now overlap more than at any point in living memory. You will not see one. Some of them have seen you. Number 4. The bull shark. You are 30 miles inland. You are in fresh water. You are not safe from sharks. Nearly all sharks cannot survive in fresh water. Their internal chemistry requires salt, and moving into a river causes their cells to take on water until the animal fails. The bull shark solved this. It has an unusually flexible osmoregulatory system, with kidneys, liver, and specialized glands working together to dump excess water and retain salt. and it can move between the ocean and fresh water freely. Bull sharks have been documented thousands of miles up the Amazon and the Mississippi. In Florida, they run up the coastal rivers, into the estuaries at the southern tip of the peninsula, and into the connected canal and lake systems inland. They have been recorded in Lake Okeechobee, reaching it through the Caloosahatchee River. They are thick, heavily built animals, commonly over 7 feet, and capable of exceeding 11. They have the highest bite force relative to size measured in any shark. They hunt in shallow, murky, low-visibility water, which is a precise description of the estuarine edge of the Everglades. And they are territorial and investigative in a way that most large sharks are not. Bull sharks are consistently ranked among the small handful of shark species responsible for serious attacks on humans worldwide. And unlike the great white, they are frequently in water you would never think to check. Number 3. The American crocodile. There is one place on the surface of the earth where wild crocodiles and wild alligators live in the same habitat. You are looking at it. The American crocodile is a tropical species. Its range runs through the Caribbean, Central America, and the northern coast of South America, and South Florida is the extreme northern edge of it, the only part of the range inside the United States. It lives in the brackish and saltwater environments of Florida Bay, the mangrove fringe, the Keys, and the coastal margins of Everglades National Park. You can tell it from an alligator by the snout, which is narrow and tapered rather than broad and rounded, by its lighter gray-green color, and by the fourth tooth in the lower jaw, which remains visible when the mouth is closed. By 1975, the Florida population had collapsed to a few hundred animals and it was listed as endangered. It has recovered to a few thousand and was reclassified as threatened. One of the most productive nesting sites in the state turned out to be the cooling canal system at the Turkey Point Power Plant, where warm water and undisturbed banks accidentally produced ideal crocodile habitat. American crocodiles are meaningfully less aggressive toward humans than their Nile or saltwater relatives, and Florida has very few recorded attacks. But a large adult can exceed 14 feet, and the animal is expanding its range northward as the population recovers and the climate warms. The overlap between crocodile habitat and human habitat in South Florida is increasing every year. Number 2. The American alligator. You knew it was coming. You probably do not know the numbers. Florida holds an estimated 1.25 million wild alligators. They occupy all 67 counties. The Everglades is the largest continuous block of alligator habitat in the state, and the animal is not merely present there, it is the engine that runs the place. In the dry season, alligators excavate and maintain depressions in the limestone and peat that hold water when everything around them does not. These gator holes become the last refuge for fish, turtles, amphibians, and the wading birds that feed on them. Remove the alligator, and large parts of the Everglades dry out completely, and the food web collapses. It is a keystone species in the most literal sense. It is also a fully capable apex predator that regularly exceeds 11 feet and 800 pounds, with a bite force among the highest ever measured in a living animal, and a hunting strategy built entirely around ambush from water that you cannot see into. Fatal attacks in Florida are rare against the scale of the exposure. Millions of people live and recreate alongside more than 1 million alligators, and deaths average around 1 per year. The pattern behind them is consistent, and it is almost always the same 3 factors: water's edge at dawn or dusk, small dogs or small children, and repeatedly a history of the animal being fed by people, which removes the natural wariness that keeps alligators away from us in the first place. Number 1. The Burmese python. Nothing else on this list has changed the Everglades. This one has rewritten it. The Burmese python is native to Southeast Asia. It is one of the largest snakes in the world, routinely exceeding 15 feet, with the Florida record standing at roughly 19 feet, and a female removed near Naples, weighing 215 pounds. It is a constrictor. It kills by holding and tightening until circulation stops. It reached Florida through the exotic pet trade, over decades, through escapes and releases. The popular story credits Hurricane Andrew in 1992 with destroying a breeding facility and freeing the founding population. And while that likely contributed, the genetic evidence points to a longer, messier origin, with multiple introductions over many years. By the early 2000s, they were established and breeding in Everglades National Park. Then researchers went looking at what had happened to everything else. A survey published in 2012 compared roadside mammal counts in the park against records from before the pythons arrived. The results were close to unbelievable. Raccoon observations had fallen by roughly 99%, opossums by 98%, bobcats by close to 90%. Marsh rabbits, cottontails, and foxes were not recorded at all. In the areas where pythons had been established longest, the mid-sized mammal community of the Everglades had essentially ceased to exist. They eat wading birds. They eat deer. Necropsies have recovered white-tailed deer from single snakes. And there is photographic and physical documentation of Burmese pythons killing and consuming American alligators, which means the animal at number 2 on this list is prey for the animal at number 1. Florida has responded with permit programs, paid contractor removal, public elimination competitions, and radar-tagged scout snakes led back to breeding aggregations. Tens of thousands of pythons have been removed. It has not worked. It is not going to work. A female can lay in excess of 50 eggs. The animals are close to undetectable in dense sawgrass and mangrove. And the surveys that have been done suggest that human removal efforts are taking a small fraction of the population. The Burmese python is not an invasive species in the Everglades anymore, in any practical sense. It is a resident. It is at the top of the food chain. And it arrived there in about 30 years. That is the 15. Here is the thing to sit with. Almost half of that list did not exist in the Everglades within living memory. The caiman, the monitor, the python, the Africanized bee, the fire ant. None of them crossed an ocean on their own. Every single one of them was carried here, in a crate, on a ship or a plane, by somebody who thought it was a reasonable idea at the time. The Everglades is the only ecosystem of its kind on Earth, and it is currently running an uncontrolled experiment in what happens when you put 4 continents worth of predators into one shallow river and let them sort it out. Nobody knows what it looks like in 50 years. Nobody is going to be able to undo it.